Hello guys and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 22. We are back with a Manchester derby with a new manager for Man United, with Arsenal 6 points clear on top of the table. So many news, Tom, and they were even this close to put, I guess, or to hold already the trophy in January. The advantage, 6 points, I think is already a lot. But even they could have won against Liverpool. And give Arteta the trophy.
I do think the Liverpool draw, which we predicted, it just keeps it interesting a little bit interesting. It does feel like, as you say, we're heading towards the procession point. If they get 10 clear, I'll concede Arsenal are going to win it. Until that point, I still think we have a title race on.
Okay, I guess at this point it's more Arsenal losing the trophy than Man City winning it. Although, of course, we need to see Man City on a run, and now they are on a run for draws. Let's see if they are able to beat the neighbors. Man United, let me know, guys, in the comments, what do you think about the games this weekend after the FA Cup, after the League Cup, and especially with that derby. So now, guys, of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. Well, Tom, and it's an early kickoff, this Man United, Man City, with a new manager for Man United, the interim one, Fletcher, not great, out from the FA Cup. Even after the game, he said they lost, so he was not included in the mix. He didn't want to be Man United manager. 7th in the Premier League, still close to the Champions League spots for Man United if you want to see the positive picture, but they are winless in the last 4 in the Premier League against really poor teams during the Christmas time. And as I was mentioning also, Man City, plenty of draws, Brighton, Chelsea, Sunderland, games that they should have won. On the positive side, I guess Semenyo, arrival and already scoring in the League Cup.
Yeah, great signing, and someone who could be a difference maker down the home straight. And I'm not sure whether the City spending is done yet. I mean, let's start with Man United, who, Darren Fletcher, you said it, and you're right, he didn't want the job, and he was doing it for a couple of weeks to do him a favour, and he did that, and he's gone back to the 18s, where he sort of belongs at this point in his coaching career. The interesting thing for me is the hiring of Michael Carrick. Now, I like Michael Carrick, and I think he is going to be a really good manager. I think his time at Middlesbrough was pretty good. There was a fall off at the end, as there always is with managers who then get the sack. And I thought his next job would be better than Middlesbrough, but not significantly better. I thought it could be a Wolves, it could be a West Ham, it could be maybe a Burnley, the 3 that go down to the Championship next season, or maybe an up-and-coming Championship team who didn't make it this season, Wrexham, for example. That's the kind of job that I thought Michael Carrick would get. So to see him this weekend at Old Trafford as Manchester United manager for the second time is a surprise. I think it shows that they weren't expecting Ruben Amorim to leave when he did. I think there's evidence here there's no succession planning at Manchester United. They expected Amorim to see his contract out. And, I've seen a few Michael Carrick teams, both at Middlesbrough and at his time at Man U before. The 3 caretaker games he had in charge. I was at the Chelsea one when he had Ronaldo on the bench for that game a few years ago. He's a pressing manager. He is a manager who's going to want to get his team up the field. He is a manager that's going to want to get his team running. And these are things that Ruben Amorim wanted to do. And he was unsuccessful in doing that for over a year. So I'm fascinated to see the shape. I think it's probably going to be a quite standard 4-2-3-1, which I think we've all been calling out for a long, long time. And people have said in the last week or so, oh, maybe the shape wasn't the problem. Maybe Amorim wasn't the problem. The shape was a problem. Amorim was a problem. They just weren't the only problems. So to go back to a more understandable shape for these players, it may well help them out. To have 2 defensive midfielders behind Bruno Fernandes, who's back fit, may well help them out. Matheus Cunha on one side has looked in decent form in recent weeks. To have Bryan Mbeumo back on the other, that's a better balance of a front 3. And it's worth noting, too, that Benjamin Šeško, who has not been amazing since coming into the Premier League this season, looked pretty good at Burnley, I thought, and had plenty of shots, good movement, bit of confidence, scored goals. So I think there's some positives there. I think the trouble is with Man United, it's going to be a bedding in period once again for a new manager, and you never quite know how that's going to go. And also, there's so many players' futures that are up in the air now, considering everything beyond May 30th is a mystery now for Man United. Is Bruno Fernandes going to want to stay into his 32nd year, the final real big year of his career? Is he going to waste another year at Man United? Can Casemiro go on? All those questions need to be answered. And you can't really plan for a summer transfer window at the moment when you don't know who the manager is going to be. And I don't think it's going to be Michael Carrick moving forward unless he wins 12 to 14 of what is left, which would be incredible. In terms of Manchester City, going forward, they look fantastic, as we saw again against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. I think Semenyo is an excellent signing. One of those signings that makes the rest of us feel bitter because we can't just solve our fitness form issues with signing, for my money, probably the best player in the league on current form in Antoine Semenyo, but they just can. And last year it was Marmoush, then it's Cherki in the summer, and now it's Semenyo. They add that to new signings like Reinders and Doku's about 3 years now, but still relatively new in the league. Savinio, I mean, it's endless. The quality going forward is incredible. The only concern might be that Erling Haaland has not been scoring recently, but that will come around. He always comes around. The man comes around, and maybe this is the game for it. And then the concern would be defensively. Elaine, who's come in, the young boy from Watford, who they'd loaned out, previously bought as a teenager from Southampton, looked quite good first couple of games, but this is a huge test for him compared to what he's had before. And Calamity Kusanov alongside him. It's a huge drop-off from Diaz and Guardiola. And I guess Ake would need to go fullback. So the only concern here would be the City back line. Plus, I would expect some sort of new manager bounce. So take the City win at 2. Those odds are really good considering how poor United have been and how good City have been in terms of not being beaten and winning games across the season. But defensively, with the issues that City have got, I would fancy United to score. So City win and both teams to score an incredibly generous 3.25. And I think both teams to score has come in United's last 4. And it's come in all 3 of the last 4 for City before the Newcastle game. So it is a regular occurrence. Semenyo's in great form. Look for him anytime at 2.5. Add that to a winner, you double your money. Nice little group as well of 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 for City. Screams 2-1 to me is 5. So a City win, both teams scoring, should be fun.
Okay, Timothy also going for both teams to score, draw or away with both teams to score. Eric, Okakbari, same. City to win 2-1, 3-1 or 4-1. It's funny the head-to-head. I think we can check it out in this Manchester derby because we can agree that Man City has been the best of the two in the recent years. But look at the stats. Man United have had decent results against the neighbor, not in the reverse fixture, 3-0, but in general, in the last 9 years, this is the stats for the last 9 years. It's a pretty decent record, showing in the derby much more than the gap that at the moment exists between these two teams. Well, great derby. It's a weekend of derbies in England in the Premier League. Next one is also a derby, Chelsea-Brentford in West London. And we have Brentford right now is the second best team in London ahead of Chelsea. In the standings, they are in a brilliant form. We had our doubts this season, but wow, what a performance, what a season. 4 wins and 1 draw in the last Premier League games. Chelsea with the debut of Rossinior at Stamford Bridge this weekend, 8th in the standings, won in the FA Cup easily, Tom, but lost against Fulham. So in the Premier League, it's 5 winless games for Chelsea.
And this is a nasty, nasty game for Chelsea and for Liam Rossinier. First Premier League game in charge. Beat Charlton, lost to Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. Semi-final first leg. And tough to assess them right now because 2 very different types of games, 2 cup games. I'm not quite sure what Liam Rossinier's best team is. How could he possibly know? But I do think it's a really important game for him because you got to hit the ground running. I think it's fair to say he hasn't hit the ground running with the loss on Wednesday. No one's really looking much at the Charlton game at the weekend. And so this is a big moment to say the problem was Maresca and I'm a different person now. I'm not a bored stooge and I'm someone that's going to lead us to wherever it is that Chelsea see themselves. I think that the ownership want them to qualify for Champions League and win a cup. And I think the fans expect them to be challenging for the Premier League title. And I think us neutrals think, well, you spent a lot of money. Why are you so far off the top of the table? Was the plan just to keep trading players like Derek Trotter? And maybe that is the plan, but that's not going to satisfy fans, the quality of the balance sheet. So fascinating this. I think it's interesting he's worked with 𝗗𝗏 before up front. I think we're going to see a bit more 𝗗𝗏 as a central striker in place of 𝗗𝗏𝗏𝗏, who's got the nod for a lot of this season. I think the fact that that Caicedo is fit and Enzo is fit means we're going to see that pair together in central midfield. And we haven't seen them a lot in recent weeks through various issues, form and fitness and resting them and suspension and what have you. So I think getting that pair together is critical for Chelsea. I think Enzo Fernandez is now, I think, their best player. I think we'd have said Cole Palmer for 2 years, but I think Cole Palmer's really in different form for the best part of 6 months. Leads us all now to look at the captain, Enzo Fernandez. Leads this team in so many ways, from scoring goals to dragging the team upfield to getting his boot in when required to clearly the most communicative of players on the field. He's a sensational footballer. And I think that the team is now fully built around him. So get that midfield together. I would probably put, if he's fit, Reece James in central midfield alongside Caicedo. If not, I guess Andre Santos. And I'd make that a real solid midfield here. And I'd try and build through Enzo Fernandez and try and get something from Cole Palmer. But shunting him out to the wing is not necessarily where he is strongest. And as ever with Chelsea, the goalkeeper and the defenders, they can have a great game. They can have an awful game. So I think they're a team that can score. I think they're a team that can concede. I wouldn't be surprised to see that here. In terms of Brentford, I think most things we've got sort of right this season, all of us collectively and me personally. But the one thing I think I'll absolutely eat a massive slice of humble pie on is how good Brentford have been. Didn't see it. Didn't see it. Even when I went to watch Brentford, when they beat West Ham in their first away win in November time, maybe October time, still didn't quite see it with Brentford. But they're so effective. It helps when you have a goal scorer in 𝗗𝗏𝗏𝗏, who's now got 16 Premier League goals, an incredible number. And not just penalties. A lot of them have been penalties, but goals from open play, different types of goals. His link-up play with Schade has been fantastic. Keane Lewis-Potter has stepped up. Yarmouk's been great this season in central midfield. Collins and Ajer at centre-back have been great. The four at the back has worked when they've been so three at the back for such a long time. We thought that wouldn't quite work, but it has in recent weeks. And, of course, you can't score a penalty against Kelleher in goal. So loads of great stuff about Brentford. And their form has been fantastic. The 3-0 win against Sunderland was impressive. The 4-2 win at Everton was incredibly impressive. The thrashing of Bournemouth was impressive. They're scoring lots of goals and not conceding many. They'll go into this game in really high confidence. And at 5.1, come on. If you're a gambler and you like a punt, this is your punt this weekend. Chelsea with a new manager, having played a real tough game in midweek against the Brentford side, who are flying high. It's a really important derby for them. Absolutely take that. I'm not saying it's the favourite scoreline. The bookies tell you that. But that is well worth a fiver of anybody's money this weekend. And I'll definitely be putting it on that. 𝗗𝗏𝗏𝗏 anytime at 2.75, a consistent bet we've made money on this season. And I just like 1-0. I don't know why, but 1-0 at 15, this game being tight, loads of missed chances, and then Brentford score late to 𝗗𝗏𝗏𝗏 to win it. I don't know. That feels a little bit too clairvoyant, but I feel that in my gut. So take the Brentford win. I'm personally putting a fiver on 1-0. I don't know. I just feel it.
Well, Brentford are good from a Chelsea fan. Timothy is telling us Constantinos also traditional 2-0 for Brentford. So there is a bit of hype for Brentford, Chelsea, and draw with both to score. Eric is telling us, or Igor, Thiago, and Pedro to score at any time. Great game. This one, another derby in West London. 2-2 was in the reverse fixture. And then we have Leeds, Fulham, both teams in really good level, really good form. At the moment, Leeds 8 points away from the bottom three. They had a superb Christmas time. Won also in the FA Cup against Derby County, although they lost in the Premier League in the last game against Newcastle in that thriller 4-3. Fulham, Tom, level on points with Chelsea after beating them at Craven Cottage. Also 7 points in the last 3 games. Two teams in form, as I said before.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that the only concern for Leeds in this great run, which came to an end with the loss against Newcastle that you mentioned, is they're not winning games. Lots of draws, 2 wins in that run. The concern is they are not getting the 3 points required. Because if they were getting the 3 points their performances deserved, this would already be over. I think it's already over. 8 points is just about doable for West Ham or Burnley if they can put a run together, but there's no great signs of that, which we'll get to. So they're probably already okay if they just keep pootling along on a point per game now. So a draw in every single game might do it for Leeds. But I do think a couple of wins is what's required now. I expect West Ham to lose again the weekend. If Leeds win, it's 11. No one's making up 11 points with whatever is left of this season. So I think that the back three, we've spoken about it previously. Strike, B.O. and Rodon have been really, really good. I think Ampadu in midfield has protected them fantastically well. And, of course, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's form, 9 goals in the Premier League this season, massively unexpected, as it is with Brendan Aronson as well, who scored twice at Newcastle. The front two is working. The midfield is working. Defence is working. Really hard to beat. High in confidence. I don't think that Newcastle loss will have damaged it too much. So I definitely understand why they go into this as pretty decent favourites. In terms of Fulham, I think that we were concerned for them in terms of Iwobi and Chukwueze going following the Burnley game, and they have just strode through that like it was nothing. The win over Chelsea was incredibly impressive and well earned. They got a draw against Liverpool where they scored that late Harrison Reed goal, which was, for me, goal of the season. But they deserve to get something from that game as well. So a lot of guys in terrific form. The back three is working for them as well with Cuenca and Anderson. I guess Diop will be in if Bassi is not back as yet from AFCON. I don't know what the flight situation is and all that sort of stuff and how fit you'll be or what have you. So I think that'll probably be the back three. It's worked really well. Back three has allowed Tom Rennie to come back in, 34 years of age, doesn't get around the field anymore, but he's got a good creative boot on him. Wilson's been low-key best player in the Premier League this season. Jimenez scoring, lots of positives around Fulham. It's the battle of 2 pretty effective 3-4-3s or 3-5-2s, depending on how you look at it. And I think it's going to be a really, really tight game, a really good game. I would pick for Leeds at 2.37 as the favourites, and I would say it's going to be tight, tight, tight. Look at the scorelines in recent times for Leeds, 4-3, 1-1, 0-0, 1-1 for Fulham, 2-1, 2-2, 1-1, 0-1. Very, very tight scorelines. If you go Leeds, take it by exactly 1 goal. That comes in at 4, which I think is really, really good, actually, for a 2-1 Leeds win, which this suggests, or a 1-0 Leeds win. Draw, I wouldn't discount as well. I think there's every chance this one ends up with a point apiece, considering the recent form of both. Fulham with 2 draws in their last 3 league games, and Leeds has been on that run of draws before this. 1-1 at 6 is nice as well. I think that's a scoreline that Leeds have had quite a lot. Sunderland and Man United most notably recently. And I know he's not quite on the same run, but as ever, look at Calvert-Lewin anytime at 2.88. And I forgot to mention this one, but it's Fulham. So put Harry Wilson anytime as well. Those are your 2 top goal scorers, one with 9, one with 7.
Well, 𝗗𝗏 actually is highlighting both for anytime goal scorer. I can't split them. Screams draw. Konats is telling us many people are going for double chance, either home or away. And if we check our smart bet tool, is even more risky the bet because it's going for the away team. Fulham to win, a straight win, 3.4. But the double chance also pays really well since they are the underdog. Next game, this one should be an easy one or not. Who knows with this Liverpool, Burnley, they won at the Cup, although it was not a great game. Also, what the hell was Szoboszlai doing? And at the Emirates, I guess, it's positive to grab a point, but also we saw, I think they are so far away from being a title contender this year, keeping the 4th spot, 3 consecutive draws in the Premier League. Tom, I guess it's time to win, but it's impossible, I think, if we want to make more money to put any handicap to this Liverpool.
Yeah, that's the trouble here. You have to go Liverpool win. I expect Liverpool to win, but in terms of betting, at the moment, I wouldn't be confident to put like 3-0 Liverpool. I wouldn't be that confident with the way it's been. In terms of editorial for Liverpool, I think Arne Slot's been very smart in recent weeks in that he's decided, right, can we win the league? No, then we can stop risking it all. We don't need to risk it all. We don't need to be ultra offensive. We don't need to have this game toing and froing and swinging. We need solidity, solidity, solidity. And they've been playing slightly deeper. They've been covering for the deficiencies of Van Dijk and 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗖𝗟𝗔𝗜𝗍 better. I think they've been slightly less daring, and I think they've left the front four to attack, and they've left everyone else to think about keeping the opposition out first. And that's led to an excellent rearguard performance at Arsenal. You have to say that, Arsenal are a team that obviously rely on set pieces, and that late chance from the corner could have changed everything. But when they don't score that, they went there to get a draw, and they got a draw. And that's pretty impressive as well, considering the injury to Bradley as well, who was a core component of what they were doing in recent weeks. But maybe should have won at Fulham when they're 2-1 up in the last couple of minutes. Didn't quite deserve to win that game, but went into it not to lose, and that was the story of it. Weren't daring enough against Leeds, and that's why they only drew that game. But it's a conscious choice. They've decided to stop the bleeding. And in stopping the bleeding, they're now racking up points. They're moving back up the table. This season is rewarding a sense of consistency, which no one else seems to have. And I think that's been a real positive thing. Obviously, no Salah back as yet. The AFCON loss was only yesterday, so no Salah here. Not that he would have played anyway. We know Isak's out. We know Bradley's out. One or two other notable injuries as well. But I think it's worth noting that I think 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗖𝗟𝗔𝗜𝗍 has played well in the absence of the rest of the forward line. I think that 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗍𝗍 should be fit, moving 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗖𝗟𝗍 out to the left again. Florian Wirtz has looked a lot better in recent weeks. He seems to be finding some sort of footing in the league. Not enough for a £100 million player, lad, but I do think he's contributing a lot more now. And despite the weird back heel against Barnsley, I do think Dominic Szoboszlai has been Liverpool's best player this season. So slow and steady, that they will hope wins the race and gets them Champions League qualification this season. Maybe even they can improve things enough to win the Champions League. Who knows? But I do think that they look a lot better and a lot more solid. And you could say that about Burnley as well. They've been solid all season, Burnley. Like, we had the conversation a lot about them. It's not that they're badly coached. Scott Parker is a good coach. It's not that they haven't got good ideas. They have good ideas. It's not that they're not adaptable. They are adaptable. They've gone to the 3-4-2-1 that Leeds are doing so effectively, or 3-5-2, whatever, that everyone seems to be doing right now because teams are finding success in it in the lower mid-table. They just don't have good enough players. That is the long and tall of it. That's the whole ball game for Burnley. The players are simply not Premier League quality. It's not about effort. It's not about any of that. They just don't have a good enough goalkeeper, good enough defenders, a good enough midfield for the most competitive money league in the world. So I expect them to push Liverpool hard here. I think that I wouldn't discount like Burnley winning it 1-0 in the last minute if Liverpool really, really have an off day. So 16 could be quite fun for somebody, but I won't be taking that. Take the Liverpool win at 1.27. I think it screams both teams score. I just think that Liverpool keep conceding soft goals in so many games. Fulham, even the Barnsley game, even the Wolves game, they find a way to concede a soft goal. So Liverpool and both teams to score is 2.88. Again, I don't know, is it generous enough to bet on? I think 2-1 at 9 is quite nice. And then as ever with Liverpool, look for them to be asleep in the first 10 minutes. Burnley scored the opening goal and Liverpool win from behind. That's usually around 9, around 10. You go 9 this morning for Liverpool to win behind. It's always worth a bet because it happens quite a lot.
Well, the handicap for Burnley could be a good idea, actually. +2, 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍 is saying, so they don't get thrashed at Anfield could be a good idea. Indeed, Liverpool to win and 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗍𝗍𝗍 to score. A couple of our viewers are also throwing this name. Well, let's go to the next game, Sunderland. Crystal Palace. I guess here we should look at Sunderland to win or even the double chance. I think we have really, really good odds to back the home team, especially seeing the moment of Crystal Palace. Tom, it was the news of the FA Cup, apart from Man United losing. The winner, the champions, losing against Macclesfield Town, and they are winless now in 9 in all competitions since the 9th of December. So would you go for Sunderland somehow in this game? They've also drawn a lot of games recently, 4 draws and 1 defeat in the last 5 Premier League games.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky one, this. But I do think Sunderland's recent run of draws can be taken into the context of so many players going away for AFCON and the end of an incredible first third of the season where they won so many games. They were so good at home. They're still unbeaten at home in the Premier League this season. And now it's time for rotation. And they brought in people like Hume and they brought in 1 or 2 others who have not been playing this season. I think Chris Riggs played some games. And, you know, some of the Championship team that they sort of discarded to come into the Premier League quite rightly. and now getting a little run, and they're still performing well. And I think that if we take them in the context of a newly promoted team, a draw at Everton, a draw against Tottenham, draw against Man City, draw against Leeds, these are all pretty impressive results. If they were actually in a relegation battle, which we expected, but of course they're not because of the platform they've built for themselves. But I think that that Brian Brobby has hit some really good form and scored some good goals recently. 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗄𝗏 remains very, very good in midfield, though I think maybe could have been due a little rest in the last couple of weeks, which that he hasn't been afforded. A couple of weeks off for him to get him fit again for the home straight might do him a favour. Not sure that's something 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗄𝗏 would agree with, but I think that's something I'd be considering if I was Regis Lebris. But yeah, look, they're not losing still. Even when they're playing poorly, they are not losing. The only issue is losing offensive players like Talby and some of these other guys that have been really affected this season. Isidore's gone off the boil a bit. I think they're relying on Brobby or bust. And at the moment, he's doing fine, but no one else is contributing to goals. That's the issue. In terms of Palace, look, the wheels are always going to come off for Crystal Palace because they were never going to be able to establish themselves in the top four. Sadly, that's the world we live in. And the vultures are now picking. The vultures are circling. And suddenly you've gone from Mateta, Eze and Sarr to Mateta, Johnson and Pino. Pino has done all right, but he's not been as good as Eze. Brennan Johnson, I think, is an interesting signing in that he's a real wide man. And yet they play kind of very narrow forwards behind the central striker. So that's an interesting one. I'm keen to see how that works out. I think you lose Danny Munoz for a long period of time. That's a drop-off in quality. You lose Chris Richards, with all due respect to Lerma or Canvo, whatever. That's a drop-off in quality. We all know the open secret is out. Oliver Glasner will not be signing a new contract and will not be staying at Crystal Palace. So it all just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. I hope they can get it back together. I hope they can get it back together enough to win the Conference League this season, which will be a fantastic achievement. 3 trophies in just over a year will be an amazing feat for Palace. And as I say, a lot of the Premier League teams should win the Conference League every season, or at least get to the final against, Fiorentina or Strasbourg are in it still under Gary O'Neill now. So I thought they were quite favourites to win it before Rosenior left. We'll see how that goes. But look, I think it's a bad moment for Crystal Palace, and I expect them to lose this game. Sunderland win at 2.82, considering they're unbeaten at home all season. Really good odds at 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗓𝗏 money. Absolutely take that. I don't discount the draw, considering the form that both teams have been on. Palace 2 draws in the last 5 in all comps. Sunderland in 90 have drawn 4 of the last 5. Of course, they had the pens against Everton after that to win the FA Cup game. So don't discount the draw at 3.25. I also quite like 0-0 at 9. Goals really hard to come by right now for both of these teams. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this end up goalless. Sunderland, Man City 0-0 recently. Palace, Villa 0-0 recently in their last league game. So don't discount that. If you are going Sunderland, lovely little group bet here of 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. That's 4.5.
Boring draw for captain this game. Yeah. Sunderland Palace, goalless draw could be an option indeed. Okakbare also doesn't see a lot of action in this game. Draw also possible. David, Sunderland by 1 goal. And then we have another derby, the third one on Saturday. Tottenham, West Ham. I guess in both games or both teams in depression. Tom, doomed completely. Both managers, both teams having a really, really bad run. I would say, surprisingly, both have still their jobs. Nuno Espírito Santo is 9 winless games, I think. Yeah. In the Premier League, at least in the Cup, they beat Queen's Park Rangers. At least Tati Castellanos scored, so perhaps he's better than Fulcrook. And what to say about Spurs, even out of the FA Cup at home against Aston Villa, they are having a pitiful home season this year, and they got Gallagher from Atletico de Madrid. He was pretty average, I must say, in Spain. Tom, 2 teams that are not clicking at all this season.
No, but I think Spurs will get away with it in terms of not being relegated. I think West Ham aren't going to get away with it this season, and they're in for a period of doldrums that's going to be tough to get out of. The Spurs story is so fascinating because I love Thomas Frank, and I think this was a really good appointment. And I think away from home, despite a couple of recent stinky performances, they've generally been pretty good. Their away form is more than acceptable. But, the ongoing theory is that now we don't talk about Spurs needing to win a trophy, and we won't do that for a couple of seasons. I think style suddenly is more important than substance, and they've hired a substance manager to replace a style manager who delivered substance. It's a funny old game. And I think that they do need some guile in midfield. I'm not sure Conor Gallagher is the right player to bring that. That's not what he brings, really. I think he brings kind of what Archie Gray has been bringing and what Bentancur has been bringing. I know he's injured now, so maybe he's a straight replacement for the injured Bentancur. But Spurs still lacking the player who can make the pass, the player who can make the through ball, the player the team can be built around. And that is the big, significant problem with Tottenham Hotspur and has been all season. It's led to a drain of confidence. The style of play has not suited lots of the players. And it's been an ongoing kind of slow-moving car crash for Thomas Frank. I do still think he can turn it around. I do still think it's the right thing not to have sacked him, but his personal unpopularity might see him come the end of this season should Spurs finish below 8th, which is a possibility. I think it will see him fall on his sword then. The good news for them, I think, is that Matthias Tel has looked really good. I had my doubts about Matthias Tel. I was surprised they signed him permanently, but I think his set-piece delivery and I think his general form has been really good in recent weeks. So I think in terms of success stories for Spurs in recent weeks, it's him. Beyond that, I would struggle to pick any out. And I think the lack of discipline at times from Mickey van der Ven and Romero shows their general unhappiness. They were brought in to be, Postecoglou players, or I think we're happy being Postecoglou players. I'm not sure how happy they are being Thomas Frank players. So those are the issues there. But of course, their issues pale into insignificance compared to what's happening at West Ham right now. I'm kind of surprised considering how quick they moved in the transfer market at the start of the window. They haven't signed a centre-half. I'm really surprised, actually, considering that Max Kilman is an abomination of a footballer. Just a true embarrassment to the sport. And so to play him alongside Tadebo's looked okay recently. You got to score 3 goals in every game to win because Max Kilman will cost you a goal. And with Mavropanos injured in the cup game at the weekend, who I don't like either, it means it's going to be Tadebo and Kilman, who was shocking in this game last year, and I expect them to be poor again here. Wan-Bissaka is back at right back, so he comes back in for Walker-Peters. I kind of expect Walker-Peters to go left back to replace Ollie Scarles to give a bit of experience over on that side. And of course, the saga this week is about Lucas Paqueta again, who has tried to leave the club in pretty much every window for 4 years. And now Flamengo have that sweet Club World Cup money. This might actually happen. The trouble is, they haven't got the time to replace him or spend that money in this market. So I would hope Paqueta will get sold today. If not, I think he'll need to play at the weekend. Look, West Ham need to take that money and reinvest in 3 positions. And that's right centre-half, left centre-half, and someone who can replace Somerville or Bowen on the wings. And they don't have those options. And when Somerville doesn't do it, he's a championship player. I think they have struggled. Bowen has struggled to carry the team this season. Again, he's top scorer. He's got 6. He'll get to double figures, but no one else is contributing. Though I will say Tati Castellanos is he's like an upper average player. But I do think his goal against QPR was good. And I went to the Forest game last week where they were absolutely robbed by some dreadful officiating. The Somerville goal should have stood. It was a disgraceful moment. But Castellanos was closing their defence down, which Wilson couldn't do, Fulcrew couldn't do, and Antonio couldn't do by the end. So it's the first time the centre-forward has closed down their backline for West Ham for 3 years. So that was pretty good. Look, it's a big derby. It's West Ham's biggest derby. And as a West Ham manager, you get told 2 things. Don't get relegated and don't lose to Tottenham. And I think they're going to happen both. So not great previously for Potter and now for Nuno. Take the Spurs win at 1.77. I know that's a bit daring considering how bad they've been at home, but West Ham are just trash, absolute garbage. And I think once Spurs have scored 1, that'll probably be that. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 Spurs is 3.5. Tottenham win without conceding is 3. Can't see a West Ham goal here. Maybe Castellanos, but at the moment, I wouldn't trust him. So take the Spurs win.
Well, finally, a team that the Spurs can beat. Spurs and under 2.5 goals for 𝗗𝗏𝗦𝗖𝗟𝗔𝗜𝗍. Spurs not good at home. Pathfinder sees a draw. Here, Frank has been bank average. He will be sacked if they draw or lose. 𝗗𝗏𝗧𝗏
If they lose, maybe. Yeah, I could see that.
And David also, I feel bad for Xavi Simons. Well, another flop in the Premier League this season. 3-0.
He should feel bad about his own performances, shouldn't he?
Exactly. He's done absolutely nothing. 3-0 in the reverse fixture. And our smart bet tool saying for this game, apart from corners, if you like to bet on corners, there you go also. And full-time Tottenham. Okay, we knew that. Tom is telling you absolutely the same thing. So This is our tips for the derby in East London. And the last game we have on Saturday is Nottingham Forest Arsenal. Arsenal to win 1.56. As you mentioned at the beginning, they missed a great chance to beat Liverpool, especially in the first half, and put more points between them and Man City. Still won also in the Carabao Cup, in the Premier League, 5 wins, 1 draw. Tom, with this Forest struggling, even if they got that massive win for them against West Ham, I guess they should be a win for Arsenal. It's never easy with Arsenal. This is the classic 1-0, 2-0 perhaps for Arsenal.
Absolutely, it's a classic 1-0 to Arsenal. I mean, a minute on Forest, I think that they were poor against West Ham. They were poor against Wrexham, poor against Villa, poor against Everton, poor against City. Didn't deserve to win against West Ham last week. And if it wasn't for just disgraceful officiating, they would not have won that game. So they're all underperforming. And I think that's a concern. Igor Jesus is not scoring goals. Gibbs White is not creating chances. Hutchinson, Hudson-Odoi, Bakwa, the other winger, have not delivered. Anderson looks a shadow of his former self. The goalkeeper's making errors. Those Sells coming in for John Victor, I think, is an upgrade. I think beyond Nico Williams, no one really impressed me at West Ham last week. And so I'd be concerned about that if I was Sean Dyche. The players aren't delivering. They're very, very caution first, and the counterattacks aren't quite working. And so he's got to try and work out the way to win football matches. I know it's really basic, but is it corners? Is it counterattack? Is it, whatever? Is it a long ball to Igor Jesus who flicks onto someone? At the moment, the pattern of attack isn't there for Forest, where it is for other teams, and it was there previously. Chris Wood being out injured for the majority of the season has not helped, though I wonder how much is a Sean Dyche player, considering the history between those two guys. So I'm not concerned about Forest because of the win against West Ham, but if West Ham did pull off a shock against Spurs this weekend, which again, we're not predicting, but if they did, I expect them to lose this game, Forest, and then that overall form again comes back into conversation. In terms of Arsenal, another impressive victory, I thought, against Chelsea in the Cup. I think that the dropped points against Liverpool at the moment aren't consequential because City also drew that week. But I do think that they don't get over the line in big games, Arsenal. Again and again and again and again and again in the league, they do not get over the line in big games. And maybe that tactic is, well, we're going to win everything else. So if they win every other game but don't beat City or Liverpool this season, they'll be champions. And of course, they did beat Villa in the return fixture a couple of weeks ago. We count that as a big game now. So Gabriel and Saliba remain incredibly impressive. Declan Rice, 𝗗𝗓𝗏𝗧, and Ødegaard midfielders hit a really strong streak of form. The only concern would really be Bukayo Saka and Gyökeres aren't quite doing it at the moment. I think if we could have had a Haaland-Semenyo season out of those two, I think Arsenal would have streaked the league already. So Gyökeres needs to step up. If not, he needs to be dropped. Kai Havertz is back. If it were me, I'd be starting Kai Havertz or Gabi Jesus in this game. I think the Gyökeres experiment at the moment needs to be put on ice as they focus on winning every game. And maybe bringing Gyökeres on when the score is 1-0, 2-0 to build his confidence if they ever get to that scoreline, which they sort of rarely do. So look, on current form, it's obvious what we're going to do here. We're going to go for an Arsenal victory because of the way that they have played in recent weeks and the continued run of victories they have been on. I think it'll be narrow. You said 1-0. I think that's very likely. Arsenal win by exactly 1 goal is a really healthy 3.5. It's not quite been coming in recently. They've been leaking goals, but I'm struggling to see a Forest goal at the moment. And so Arsenal win to nil is 2.5, and a 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 group bet is 2.88. And as ever, it's an Arsenal game. Look at the corner market. Look at Gabriel to score a header, Saliba to score a header. Look at over 10 corners in this match, and then to score at least one of them.
Okay, we like healthy, Tom. It's January, so it's perfect to be healthy in this month. Also, Kakbare going for a healthy win for Arsenal. 2-0, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Forest are terrible in front of goal. Arsenal to win 2-0. Our smart bet is going for Arsenal halftime, Arsenal full time. Another good option indeed, 1-0 in the first half, and perhaps getting the advantage until the end. Well, we don't expect Arsenal to drop points here. Remember also, of course, that we have Champions League next week, and we've seen so many games in England. So let's see also if we see some rotation. And for Sunday, we have a couple of games. Wolves Newcastle is the first one, and Tom, I know, is being a little bit daring, but look at these odds for Wolves. Perhaps to win, to draw, double chance, +1. They've been way better recently, even in the FA Cup. They won 6-1. They drew with Everton. They beat West Ham, and we saw Newcastle having trouble away from home, even if they are coming from 3 consecutive wins in the Premier League. Do you think we might see a surprise here?
No, I don't. I don't think that. I think there's a possibility that Wolves get above Burnley and West Ham this season, considering that West Ham are just tanking their season in a way that I'm just staggered by. And I think Wolves have just accepted relegation. There's a freedom to them that wasn't there recently. And I think in 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗖𝗟𝗔𝗜𝗠𝗏, they found a potential superstar who they're definitely going to be forced to sell in the summer. And I think they've found some form for Hwang and 1 or 2 others too. So look, these supporters deserve something. They have suffered like no one has in English football for quite some time. The goal is to get above 11 points. The goal is to maybe get to 20 points and go down with a respectable number. I think that is possible, and I think there are further home wins here. But I think Newcastle have too much on the line to drop points in a game like this. Newcastle have risen to 6 in the standings in recent weeks. They've started to win away games. Burnley recently was a sticky test, and they got through that well. I think they've just started to go through the gears, Newcastle, at a moment where it was required. I think the drop-off in form of 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗏𝗏 has been lessened in terms of our conversation because Johan Wissa has come back in, though I thought he was pretty poor in the cup game against City in midweek. That chance he missed at 0-0 could eventually come back to cost him. I think already has, considering the second goal for City in that game. Some good rotation recently. Tonali being dropped, Joe Linton being dropped. They're all getting a bit of a rest. But I think they'll go pretty strong here. And I think any set of players that Newcastle could put out would be too strong for this Wolves team who, yeah, look, they have turned it around a bit recently. There is some respectability now on the amount of points they've got, but I think Newcastle will have too much, and they've got too much going forward. They've got too much from the bench, and if Gordon struggles, they can bring on Barnes. If Murphy struggles, they can push Joe Willock up or play Murphy for 90. There's so many options for them. And even Lewis Miley at fullback, I think, has been pretty impressive, filling in for the ever-injured Livramento. So you've got to go Newcastle win. Even at 1.75, you've got to take that. I do fancy a goal from Wolverhampton Wanderers. So both teams to score at 1.62 on its own. Make that with the Newcastle win. You double your money. 2-1 Newcastle at 8.5 is quite nice. And then look at potential goal scorers in this game. For Wolves, 𝗗𝗚𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏 anytime at 4.33. I think he's really impressive. As we saw in the win over West Ham, he scored his first Premier League goal and Wolves third in that one. There's a confidence about Wolves, so I expect them to nick something. And in terms of Newcastle, all the front three are dangerous for me. Wissa anytime at 2.38. He'll want to make up for that awful performance in the Carabao Cup on Tuesday.
Well, some people are seeing both teams to score here. Wolves is coming around recently. Wolves to score at least 1 goal. Pathfinder, Connacht also see both teams to score, but with Newcastle, looks like winning this game. And also on Sunday, we have Aston Villa, Everton. Great win for Aston Villa in the FA Cup, as we mentioned before, at Tottenham ground. In the Premier League, they drew with Crystal Palace. And Everton having a bad moment now out of the FA Cup, drew with Wolves, lost to Brentford. It's only 1 win in the last 6 Premier League games.
Yeah, the Villa are interesting at the moment because the sale of Daniel Marlon to Roma has surprised me, which I think is going through today. So he's obviously not going to be in the squad because he'll be a Roma player. And he'd been starting recently because Ollie Watkins had been struggling with ongoing injury issues, knee, I think. So someone's got to come in for Villa to share the load with Ollie Watkins. One assumes the sale of Marlon means they've already got someone in the pipeline lined up. It does mean Watkins has got to play here, start here, and play for 90 minutes, which is not something he's been doing too often recently. In terms of midfield, hopefully Onana will be back in a couple of weeks' time, if not this week, because the Kamara-Onana partnership in midfield with Tielemans in front is so critical to how good Villa have been this season. And with all due respect to whomever else might come in, maybe they drop McGinn deeper or whatever, it isn't as good without that incredible pairing in those deep-lying central midfield roles. So that's my only concern for Villa, lack of rotation and not having their first-choice midfield available to them. I think that makes them a slightly easier proposition to play. Not an easy proposition, but easier. But the trouble is that Everton have got so many issues right now. Dewsbury Hall being missing for a long time has been a problem. Michael Keane suspended, Grealish suspended. Other players, the backup players, have not really turned up this season, be it McNeil or Dibbling, not really contributed at all. Barry's got a couple of goals recently, but still looks a bit of a diamond in the rough. And even defensively, like James ฎukowski has been so consistent for his Premier League career, but every now and then at the moment he's dropping a clanger. He's 33 now. Is that showing a little bit potentially with him? And bringing O'Brien back into centre-half where he's been playing fullback means Patterson goes to fullback. I'm not sure he's good enough. So loads of issues racking up with Everton. They do still have James Garner. I think has been exceptional this season and very consistent. But with the amount of injuries they've got, the import this game has for Aston Villa compared to Everton, whose season will just peter out now in the second half of the campaign, you have to go Villa win at 1.74. Struggling to see an Everton goal, and I think Villa defensively have been pretty decent in recent weeks. Soft goal conceded against Tottenham and Forest apart. They haven't conceded many chances since the Arsenal game. So Villa win to 0, 2.75. And again, group bet 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Look at 3. I think they'll probably win this with a clean sheet.
Villa to win this, David, considering Fenerbahce next week, I can see a tight one for Aston Villa. Well, they play on Thursday, indeed, Europa League. Villa will put this one to bet. Villa to win and over, I guess, 1.5 goals. 2-0 for Villa, according to Erkan. And on Monday, we have one extra game, Brighton. Bournemouth, great win for Brighton at Old Trafford in the FA Cup. Welbeck scoring against his ex. Also good memories in the city of Manchester since they drew with City before the FA Cup. And for Bournemouth, Tom, it was a crucial win. The last one against Tottenham, you mentioned before Semenyo with Man City. I guess if you can write and ask for a farewell, it should be like the one Semenyo had against Tottenham in the last Bournemouth game.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's start with Brighton. I think that they needed this little rejuvenation in form after a pretty poor run, which culminated in nicking that point against West Ham in the 2-2 draw. That kind of turned things around for them. Then the fixture had been quite nice. In terms of Burnley at home to follow is a nice little foundation builder that led them to go to City with some confidence and get something there. Plus, Danny Welbeck always scores against Man United. So that was an obvious one from the FA Cup last weekend. Look, I still think that they are... The players that need to be outstanding for Brighton have not been outstanding consistently this season. That's Minte, that's Mitoma, that's one or two others. Gomez, they've had good moments, but have not been consistent. The strikers have been good, but they haven't been consistent, and that's led to the season they have had. They're a team in need of some rejuvenation, some refreshment, some investment. And I think this summer coming up is going to be really interesting for Fabian 𝗗𝗏. Has he taken them as far as Brighton could possibly go? We'll see, depending on how much money they want to spend and where they want to change things. And Lewis Dunk's coming to the end of his road, so that position what they've had filled for over a decade needs to be filled, and that's not going to be easy to do. We're expecting a couple of other big sales. Paul Van Hecke has been attracting big interest with big money, so the future is going to be interesting for them. And I think this season may well peter out into upper bottom half. In terms of Bournemouth, look, in another season, they'd be in trouble. If West Ham weren't so unbearably cack, I think they might be looking over their shoulder thinking, oh dear, we haven't done enough this season. And I think the injury to Tyler Adams has been significant, still out of this one. I think losing Semenyo has carried the team for lots of the campaign, is really significant. And they haven't yet reinvested that money to a point where I think that they are going to do any more than same as Brighton, somewhere between 11th and 14th. Junior Krupi's had some good moments. One or two other guys have had some good moments. But look, you don't lose Semenyo, I think, and go on to a good result after that. And I think at the moment there is no investment in his position. So Brighton win at 1.98 is a bit of a gimme. I think it'll be fun, this. Both teams tend to score in both games. That's happened in all but one of both these teams' last 5 games. Only the clean sheet against Burnley for Brighton wasn't both teams to score. So Brighton win, both teams to score, 3.25.
All right, same for 𝗗𝗏, Brighton to win and both teams to score. Brilliant minds think alike. Tom Rennie, this is it for our Premier League video match day 22, the weekend of the derbies. in England before the Champions League, before the Europa League the following week. Remember, of course, that you have the chance to post your tips in Oddspedia. We have plenty of tipster competitions going on, especially one for the Premier League with some money as a giveaway. There you go, 1,000 euros as a prize pool. And we have again another Ukrainian guy topping the table for winners. And also we have rivals for you, remember, where you can create your own tipster league. Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
Tricky this week, but I've taken Arsenal to win at Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are one of the worst teams in the country, and Arsenal are marching towards the title, so Gunners to win against Forest.
Good safe bet, actually, almost 1.6. And your Aka?
3 teams this week. Arsenal in there to win at Forest. I think that's the safest bet in the Premier League this season. Man City to win as well. The Manchester derby, slightly daring there. And Villa to win as well against Everton. So the top 3, all to win, 4.73.
All right, Tom, thank you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.